Your crush is smiling with blood on her face as she refuses to ever let you leave. Our story begins in a quiet local coffee shop where Bear desperately tries to practice a romantic confession for his longtime crush, Nikki. Because his words sound incredibly awkward, his best friend Ian immediately calls the whole attempt cringe and awful. To break the ice, Ian suggests that Bear should be playfully mean to her by calling her Freaky Nikki. Although Ian thinks this is a hilarious idea, Bear knows that Nikki absolutely hates that nickname. When Bear tries to plan a casual date for trivia night, Ian immediately shuts the idea down to avoid ruining their weekly group hangout. After a frustrating afternoon, Bear returns home only to find his beloved cat lying dead on the floor. While looking around in a panic, he realizes the poor animal accidentally swallowed his strong prescription pills. While crying over his pet, Bear notices his phone lighting up with an incoming call from Nikki herself. Although he is deeply devastated, Bear decides to hide the tragedy and talks to her like nothing is wrong. When Nikki asks him about trivia night, Bear initially tells her that he cannot make it. As soon as Nikki mentions she's quitting her job, Bear instantly changes his mind and agrees to go. Before they can finish their call, Nikki's crystal necklace accidentally falls into a street drain. Because he wants to buy her a replacement, Bear immediately heads to an occult shop to find a new crystal. When none of the crystals catch his eye, his gaze lands on a toy called the One Wish Willow. Although the packaging claims it grants one wish, the shopkeeper warns him that buyers always return a complaint. When they gather for trivia night, Bear follows Nikki to the bar, but gets interrupted every time he tries to speak. While they sit with their friends, only Sarah finds out about the tragic death of Bear's cat. As the night wraps up, Nikki asks Ian to drive her home because she does not want to go to the next bar. To keep her close, Bear quickly steps in and offers to drive her home instead. While they sit in the car, Nikki learns about his cat and explains that she wants to focus entirely on her writing. When she asks Bear if anything is going on between him and Sarah, Bear quickly reassures her that they're only friends. Although Bear tries to ask her out, his nerves prevent him from saying the words. As she leaves, Bear desperately calls her Freaky Nikki, but she gets angry and asks if he likes her. Because Bear still cannot confess, Nikki turns and leaves him alone in the dark. In a moment of pure desperation, Bear pulls out the toy and wishes that Nikki loved him more than anyone in the world. As soon as he breaks the stick, Bear notices that Nikki is still standing outside on her porch. When she walks back to his car, she suggests that he come inside since he just lost his cat. While Bear asks if she's okay, Nikki suddenly snaps and asks what is going on before inviting him in again. Before he can react, Nikki climbs into his car and demands that they go to his house. When Bear begins to panic, Nikki bursts into heavy tears and confesses that her dad is dying. Because he feels a wave of sympathy, Bear has no choice but to take her back to his place. As soon as they walk in, Nikki whispers that the house smells exactly like him. When Bear gets her settled, Nikki suddenly begs him to lie down in bed with her. Although he feels incredibly awkward, Bear eventually gives in after she pleads with him again. While they lie together, Nikki moves closer and rests her head on his shoulder. When Nikki suddenly leans in and kisses him, Bear is initially filled with a mix of happiness and deep confusion. Before he can react, Nikki abruptly snaps back and, terrified, asks what is happening. While crying in fear, she frantically apologizes and claims that she had a sudden panic attack because she saw something. Because he is too disturbed to sleep, Bear spends the night searching the internet to see if the toy actually works. While searching online, Bear finds wildly mixed answers, with some people claiming it is a scam and others saying it is real. When Nikki suddenly wakes up, she asks what he is doing and demands that he lie back down with her. Because he does not want to upset her, Bear crawls back in a bed, where they cuddle until drifting off to sleep. When Bear wakes up the next morning, he is horrified to find Sandy's dead body laid out for a funeral. Although he is deeply disturbed, Bear heads to work with Nikki. When they arrive at the music store, Ian immediately asks Bear about their sudden closeness. While Bear tries to explain that Nikki is acting erratically because her father has cancer, Ian looks completely skeptical. Because Nikki has always hated her father, Ian insists that she does not care about him and has probably just smoked something. As soon as their work shift ends, Nikki walks past Bear and heads straight toward Ian's car to grab her books. While Bear watches in confusion, she climbs into the passenger seat so Ian can take her home. Later that night, Bear calls Ian to check on her, but Ian insists that she acted completely normal. Right as they are speaking, a sudden knock at Bear's front door cuts their phone conversation short. When Bear opens the door, he finds Nikki standing on his porch all dressed up. Because she wants to apologize, she tells him that she had simply wasted the night before. When Bear asks her if she remembers what happened, Nikki admits she only recalls bits and pieces. After she confesses that she knows he likes her, Bear nervously asks if she actually likes him back, and Nikki happily says yes. Over the next stretch of time, the two of them start acting like a happy and affectionate couple. Although Bear is thrilled to be with his crush, Ian and Sarah are deeply unsettled by how suddenly Nikki changed. While the couple remains lost in their own little world, their friends can feel that something is seriously wrong with Nikki. While they are having dinner at a restaurant, Bear gets an urgent phone call from Ian. During the call, Ian reveals that Nikki's father is completely healthy and does not have cancer at all. To make matters worse, Ian mentions that Nikki recently told Sarah she only liked Bear as a little brother, because her entire personality seems to have snapped into someone else. Ian warns him that this situation is incredibly dangerous. When Bear returns to the table, Nikki happily hands him a tiger's eye crystal that belonged to her mother. While Bear looks in her eyes, he asks her if her father really has cancer. Instantly, Nikki's face twists with anger as she begs him not to ruin their beautiful date. When Bear tries to push for answers, Nikki aggressively asks why any of it matters if they are happy. When Bear wakes up the following morning, he is terrified to see Nikki standing silently in the corner of a dark room. While she stares at him without blinking, Nikki creepily explains that she is just watching him sleep. Suddenly, she begins to cry and confesses that she hates her dreams because she feels like Bear does not love her back. Frightened by her erratic behavior, Bear quietly turns over to avoid looking at her. As soon as he turns his back, Nikki lets out a scream and demands to know why he does not love her. Although her terrifying outbursts are driving him insane, Nikki suddenly calms down and climbs into bed beside him. When Bear tries to get up, Nikki violently screams at him to stay. While getting ready for work later that morning, Bear is horrified to realize that Nikki has crudely chopped off a chunk of his hair. When he angrily tells her never to do that again, Nikki simply flashes a wide smile and kisses him. Because he wants to keep the peace, Bear forces himself to say that he loves her. Before he heads out of work, Bear is shocked to find that Nikki has completely taped up their front door with heavy duct tape. After he struggles to pry it open, Nikki stands behind him and urinates right on the floor with a wide smile. While sitting at work during his lunch break, Bear opens the meal that Nikki packed for him. Inside the box, he finds several secret photos of himself that Nikki had snapped while he was sleeping. Although he is deeply unsettled, Bear takes a large bite of his sandwich while talking to Sarah. When Sarah mentions how weird it is that they started dating so suddenly, her eyes land on a small note tucked inside the lunchbox. When Bear reads the terrifying note asking for the verdict on the cat, he instantly realizes what he is eating. While a wave of pure horror and nausea hits him, Bear runs to the nearest trash can and throws up his lunch. After their shift ends, Ian offers to drive Bear home while questioning his toxic relationship. Because Bear has been acting like everything is completely fine, Ian points out that Nikki is clearly having a dangerous mental breakdown. When Bear asks why he was excluded from Ian's party tonight, Ian admits that he wants to keep his distance from Nikki. Because Nikki refuses to leave Bear alone, Ian agrees to let him come only if Nikki stays behind. While riding in his car, Bear spots the packaging for the One Wish Willow and desperately dials the helpline number. Although he begs the customer support agent to cancel the wish, the voice explains that the spell is completely permanent. Because the agent coldly reveals that the wish will only break when Bear dies, a wave of pure terror washes over him. When Bear asks to speak about Nikki's behavior, the line suddenly crackles as Nikki's voice starts screaming hysterically from the other side. As soon as Bear walks into his house, he finds Nikki standing exactly where he left her. While she heads off to take a shower, Bear desperately asks her if she actually cooked his cat. When she calmly admits to the horrific deed, Bear mentions that he is heading out to a boys-only night at Ian's house. Instantly, Nikki stops the shower and screams that she's coming along because Sarah told her she would be there. When they arrive at the party, Nikki begins laughing way too loudly at every joke, making everyone in the room feel incredibly uncomfortable. During a party game, Bear gets dared to kiss Sarah, who is sitting directly to his left. Before Bear can even move, Nikki's face drops as she violently shoves Sarah out of the way to take her spot. After planting a desperate kiss on Bear, she screams at the group that none of them will ever understand a love as pure as theirs. When Ian asks her if she's okay, Nikki snaps and begins smashing a glass bottle against her own face. After a chaotic trip to the hospital, Bear brings her back to his quiet house in complete silence. Bear wants to process the horror in the bathroom, but Nikki is begging to watch him. He angrily asks why she is doing this and if she is actually Nikki. When she smiles and calls herself as freaking Nikki, Bear tells her that they desperately need some space. Hearing that, Nikki breaks into heavy sobs and claims she is only trying to be the person he wanted. Because he realizes none of her love is real, Bear softly tells her that he loves her and commands her to go to sleep. Suddenly, she starts reciting a creepy, robotic poem about being cold. As soon as Bear falls asleep beside her, his phone lights up with a frantic message from Sarah begging to meet at the park. When Bear tries to sneak away, Nikki murmurs in her sleep and begs him to kill her. When Bear asks what is so bad about being with him, the real Nikki temporarily wakes up and whispers that she has never actually been with him. Although she begs him to end her life, Bear ignores her and runs out to meet Sarah at the park. When they meet, Bear lies and claims that Nikki is just acting out because her father is dying. After Sarah calls out his lie, she reveals that Nikki and Ian had a secret physical relationship for 2 years. Before Bear can even react to the betrayal, Nikki suddenly materializes from the shadows with a heavy brick. While Bear watches in paralyzed horror, Nikki repeatedly slams the brick into Sarah's head until she is dead. When she looks up at Bear, Nikki calmly apologizes for the mess and claims that this is actually his fault. After they hide Sarah's body in a car, Bear opens her art school letter and discovers she was accepted. While weeping over the loss of his friend, Bear runs back to the occult shop to buy another one-wish willow. When he tries to make a wish to reverse the curse, the wooden stick refuses to break because he has already used his turn. Desperate for help, Bear runs to Ian's house and confesses the entire truth about the magic toy. Although Bear begs him to wish the curse away, Ian thinks he's insane and wishes for $1 billion instead. As money begins raining from the ceiling, Ian screams in terror while Bear falls to his knees in complete defeat. When Bear returns to his house, he finds Nikki performing a bizarre ritual with Sarah's mutilated corpse. Suddenly, a terrified Ian bursts through the door to help his friend, but Nikki immediately shoots him dead. While Ian lies dying, Nikki forces Bear to look at her and say that he loves her. After Bear calms her down with compliments, he manages to snatch the gun and lock himself in the bathroom. While Nikki pounds violently on the door, Bear tries to shoot himself in the head but cannot pull the trigger. Instead, he grabs the remaining bottle of cat-killing pills and swallows every single one of them. When he walks out to Nikki, they share one final, peaceful smile before Bear suddenly collapses onto the floor. As Bear lies dying from the fatal overdose, the supernatural wish finally loses its hold over Nikki. While the real Nikki suddenly wakes up and regains her senses, she looks around the room at the bloody bodies of her friends. Obsession 2026 Movie Recap ends with the true horror of her actions sinking in, and finally, she lets out a devastating scream that echoes through the empty house.